All right, peace and blessings, y'all. This is part 8B. So you all know my normal introduction, all of that. But I'm trying to preserve as much time as I can so I can get as much information as I can in. All right, so bear with me, okay? The last thing we talked about was the comparison between how the slave owners broke a horse, and it was no comparison to the way they broke slaves and the things. I mean, they weren't killing horses. They weren't tearing horses limb from limb. You know, they weren't doing that kind of stuff. They were doing that to Africans. And so it's just a horrendous thing that they were doing. But the other part that I wanted to get to was when they got to this part where they got to talking about how they would do the slaves, break the slaves in. And they said when it came down to breaking the uncivilized N-word, they would get two male slaves, one that was mean and pretty much non-compliant, and then maybe both were. But what they did with the first one was they stripped him of his clothes, put him in front of all the rest of the Africans that were standing around, including the mothers and the children. And then they tied his legs between two horses going in opposite directions and literally split him, just tore him apart. Wherever the limb tore off, that's where it tore off. But that's how this man died. Okay. And as if that were not bad enough, and they were made to watch. They wouldn't let them turn away or anything. They had to watch. And as if that was not bad enough, then they took the other male and beat him to literally within an inch of his life. Now, and they said don't kill him because they could use him for breeding later if he was in good enough shape. And then they made the females nurse him back to some sense of normalcy. So they had to, this man was beaten almost to death. They had to nurse his wounds, change his bandages, and then probably under threat that if he died, then they were going to get killed, you know. And all the time having the image of this other African man that had been ripped apart by these horses. These were wicked people. You just have to be insane. You have to be a psychotic, you know, to do something like this. They knew to another human being. They knew that this was another human being. They knew that they had to find some extraordinary way to dehumanize, to subjugate these African men. 'Cause these African men were no joke, you know. They had a trip however long it took him to get from Africa to here, but they timed their feet. Some of them hit the ground. They were running. So, you know, and they were strong. And they knew it. And they did not want to have to compete or I shouldn't say compete, but go up against that strength. They didn't want the one-on-one with the Africans. They didn't want that. And they knew that if they didn't find a way to break them, that is exactly what they were going to get. So then, after they did that, and after they beat the other man to within an inch of his life, the other African to within an inch of his life, then they went with a project of how were they going to break the process of breaking an African woman. Now, let me tell you, y'all know us. I know us. Most of us, you're going to have to do something. You know what I always say? The Almighty knew what he was doing when he had me born, when I was born, because had I been born then, I may not have even lived after I learned to talk. Because I would have been, oh, wait a minute, So I just, anyway, I'm grateful to be able to go back and tear because people read books just like people watch movies. People watch movies and they watch movies for entertainment. But I'm telling you, if you watch a lot of what they put on TV, they're telling you what they're going to do. And they're counting on you being so entertained that you miss it. That's why I was telling everybody to watch The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I believe there are 3 more episodes out now in April if you want to go back and watch it. But watch it looking for what the true message is. Okay, getting back. They said to run a series of tests on the woman, the African woman, to see if she would submit to the desires of the slave master willingly. And they test her in every way. I'm not even going to try to fathom what every way was, but I have an idea that none of it was good, okay? And then they said if there was any sign of resistance in submitting completely to the will of the slave master, do not hesitate. Do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her and beat them into submission. Whip them into submission. And of course, they have all kinds of things. The African male had all kinds of things. How am I going to, I'm down, I'm out, I can't, my family is out there and I can't do anything for them because I can't do anything for myself right now. I'm just, imagine the things that we as a people went through. Again, they said, don't kill her, because if you do that, you will spoil good economics. Remember, all of slavery was about making the old pigs rich, wealthy, okay? Remember, they were the dregs of society in Europe. They were kicked out and determined not to go back to that again. And if it meant conquering another people, and you say, well, how were they able to do that? Because they tricked them. They didn't go over there with chains and, and things and say, okay, come on, y'all, you're going to be slaves. No, they tricked them into thinking things were okay. Even the chiefs, we have a tribe, I forgot which one it was, that went around the world saying that they were sorry to all Africans who had been enslaved because they had been tricked into enslaving or deals with, especially with American slaveholders, slave traders. So they said, don't kill her. And then they said, when you complete submission, when there is complete submission, she will then train her offspring in the early years to submit to labor when they became of age. And of course, yes, she would, because those were her babies. She didn't want to see them enslaved, but she didn't want to see them whipped. She didn't want to see these bullwhips tearing the flesh off of the skin of babies like they had done her and many others that were there. That's how they did. It was conquer and control. It was never, ever, ever be humane to anybody. And here's the thing, and I want y'all to hear this, everybody that's listening. You don't plant apple seeds and get grapes. What you put in is what you get out. And an apple tree, you don't plant an apple seed today, get an apple tree tomorrow. It takes time. But when that apple tree comes back, you're going to get apples season after season after season. Okay, y'all, time's running out. Gotta go. Love y'all. Thank you for joining me. Stay woke, and we will see you next time.